Stacy.
Hey, Michael. How
Hello,
are
my
you?
friend. We are episode 36.
36.
36. And if you add those two numbers together, they always add up to 9. And that's like a good
9.
omen. You know what I mean?
It is a good omen. I saw Rocky 3 when I was 9.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
When I was 9 years old, I was getting pounded by the neighborhood bully.
Oh.
Yeah. I was getting pounded into the dirt. And Rocky hadn't come into my life yet. It was the $6 Million Man,
Aw.
Superman, Zorro, and the Lone Ranger. Yeah, none of them are happening. But anyways, Stacy, where are we broadcasting from? I mean, we have a snorkel. I mean, this is extraordinary. I mean, we are in a location right now that myth has been made from. I mean, this is incredible.
It's beautiful around here.
It really is.
Yes.
I mean, the history that we are broadcasting live from the fallen city of Atlantis.
Yes.
This is incredible. I think this may be our home. I think so.
We're snorkeling down to Atlantis.
Yes, we're saying exactly. We found a little air pocket, and somehow we managed to bring all of our crap with us and keep it dry. I mean, it looks like I'm back home in my Rocky room. So
no, I know it was an amazing job you've done there underwater.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's very tough too because the hammer slows down with the velocity of the water, with the nailing and everything. It's very, very difficult. Very difficult. But that's okay. We're here. We're making it. Hey, listen, how's your week been?
It's crazy. I'll be honest. I'm like, so Mike, help me out with this episode because I am buried in cardboard and packing in boxes. And so our guest who's coming is fantastic. And you guys know each other well. So he's going to be a great interview coming up in just a second.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So I am going to be leaning on Michael for this one this week. And you had some really cool posts. You're reading scripts. You're reading the scripts. They're available. Rocky 1, 2, 3 is available now?
Yeah. One has been, and just like the other day, 2, 3, and 4 have been released now for free on ScriptSlug.
Nice.
And somebody that follows me on my Instagram said, "Hey, Mike, you got to check this out." And he sent me the links. I went right over and I read Rocky 2 yesterday. And for me, the whole reason one of the core reasons out of necessity and needing to pay for my bills that I started my tours was because when you see the Rocky sites for the first time, you can only see them once for the first time.
Right.
And there was such a high I got off of that. So when I see these sites again through the eyes of the people that take the tours, I get kind of like a second wind, a second high over it. Yeah. And that's what happened to me yesterday. I sat down, I had other plans, but then I said, oh my God, this Rocky 2 script was out. And I sat and I read the whole thing from start to finish. And I'll tell you, I got very emotional. I cried at certain parts of it. I mean, I cried masculine, I was bench pressing a Buick while I was crying. I was taking out terrorists when I was reading this, but it did get me. It was fantastic because there are these little scenes in it that are really hard to come by. You can't really go back. I know these scenes are still out there. I know that they exist, and someday I hope that Sly has the power to pull them out and maybe put them on his Instagram and maybe talk about that. I think that would be brilliant. I really do. Now, some of the scenes I wrote down, some of the scenes and what they are. So the script that they have out there is revised July 13th, 1978. Mm-hmm. And I'll jump. The opening is basically the same. When Rocky tells Adrian to go home, he's going to be busy healing in the hospital for a little while. Paulie and Adrian walk out to the parking lot to get a cab of the hospital. And Paulie is now nervous that Rocky's going to ask her to marry him, and she's going to leave him, and Paulie's going to be left behind. And so Paulie has this one line that I thought was very Paulie-esque. You and Rocco, you ain't got the same attic. In other words, they think very differently. So Paulie's trying to put the kibosh to this, right? And then, Adrian goes back and forth, and he demands that she get in the car, and she doesn't want it. And he goes, "Get in the car," I says. And I love what he adds on, "I says." I love that, right? And so she refuses, and she says, "Go home, Paulie." She gives him a kiss. All right. Next scene is the scene where Paulie is asking for the job, and he talks the whole scene with Paulie and Rocky at his bedside. That replaced Paulie with Gazzo. Gazzo has this scene instead of Paulie. And then the nurse comes in and kicks Gazzo out. And Gazzo, Sly wrote this really cool thing. And it's Gazzo talking to the nurse. And he says, hey, let me explain the situation. Here's the situation. Rocky Balboa is a relative of mine. And that should mean visiting privileges in any language. Capiche? Right? And I just thought, but the nurse was having none of it. She kicks him out. All right.
Right. Those nurses.
Those nurses, Stacy, you nurses, kicking ass all the time. So the next deleted scene was Rocky's room after he talks to Creed. Did you give me your best? Yeah, man, of course I did.
Right.
All right. So here's the description. Rocky re-enters his room, moving stiffly towards the bed. He sees a silhouette moving beside the bed. It's Adrian. And she says, I couldn't find a cab. In other words, she wasn't going to go anywhere. She stayed by his side.
Right.
All right. Out of the hospital, the agent's telling them, you got to move fast while things are still hot. There was no tiger cage asking for marriage. That wasn't written. That wasn't in there.
Yeah, right? That was a happy accident considering their first date. Yeah.
So then they go right to the church. They go right to the church with Father Carmine. And the interesting thing here is that he had like 30 people were there at the original scenario, friends and family or whatever. 30 people. And I thought, okay. So anyways, then when we see Rocky right after that, they get the car and the tiger jacket and so on. And then Rocky goes to meet the mayor. And, of course, they're mugging at City Hall back and forth. The mayor gives him an award. And then the press says, Rocky, now that you're retired, what are you going to do? And, of course, Rocky says, maybe I'll run for mayor. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Then Rocky, in Rocky's nature, he takes Adrian shopping for a lot. So it's broken up through maybe a quarter of the script. Like he buys her clothes and he buys her this, he buys her that. And so he's spending too much money on her. And Adrian kind of knows that, but he just wants her to have everything because he never thought he could get her anything. All right.
Right.
Here's something that I learned reading this. When Rocky's in the street playing stickball with the kids.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
All right. I thought Rocky used to say, once he hits the ball and it goes up over the houses, I thought Rocky said, now I know they weren't no waste. As in, he was referring to the swings as a kid that he took. They weren't wasted swings. That's not what he says. Here's what he says. Now I know the day weren't no waste. In other words, he hit a home run with stickball, so it was a good day.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, that makes more sense.
Yes.
It does. That's like me trying to interpret Michael Jackson's song. If we ever get Sue on here, back on here to talk or whatever, you should ask her what I think Michael Jackson sings. Like the one song, I want to sing the song that Michael sang.
Yeah.
All right. I want to sing this song that Michael sang. That's what I thought they say, but they say some other thing, and because I cannot sing words. Unlike our next guest coming up, this guy can rap, sing.
Yes, he can.
he can do everything. I've even watched him bench press Godzilla at one point. This guy's got it all. He's got the mental and physical thing going. All right. Let me finish up with these. Rocky steps to his. Oh, okay. So here's the funny thing. Rocky does a lot of the reading, those novels. He reads to Adrian on his back steps in his yard at his row home. And we never saw that. They were always in bed or in the hospital. So I thought that would have been kind of interesting. Rocky in the little backyard.
Right.
Then they go looking for baby furniture, and Rocky's there with the hat and the tiger coat and everything.
Yeah.
And Adrian suggests to the sales lady black baby furniture. And the sales lady goes, are you crazy? This is insane. And she goes, well, that's Rocky's favorite color. Rocky feels a little self-conscious by the sales lady. And he goes, well, maybe we could get something lighter. How about like brown? And I just thought that was very Rocky-esque. Like technically it's lighter, So that was kind of funny. Then, okay, let's see here. here's something I wrote you yesterday about this. The conversation in the basement at the heavy bag, that whole thing, Adrian going back to work, Rocky getting fired, that originally took place at a Lamaze class. Rocky and Adrian are in this big Lamaze class, and their conversation, which is loving, and they're not arguing, but they're talking a little bit louder, and so they're disrupting the class, and the Lamaze coach is trying to, and Rocky goes, oh, wait a minute, I just got to work on this. And he's interrupting, and then he goes back to it would be a scene to see Rocky doing Lamaze. I just think that
I can't even picture it. I mean, I'm sure you can pull it off.
I think you could. I wonder if it got filmed.
That's what I would love to see.
If it got filmed.
Yeah.
And I know Sly did mention to me a while back that there was a lot he cut because he felt it was slowing the movie down. For instance, this is one I would demand he put back in the movie. I think this would have even heightened Rocky 2.
Yeah.
Rocky walks the city with Butkus at various locations. The Rocky Steps, the river, there's a little park where Butkus lays down and Rocky puts his head on him, and he has these deep conversations with Butkus. Because this is the only person he could talk to. So Paulie's an idiot. Adrian's back working again. So he's roaming the city like this lost warrior. And I thought, oh man, I know that was filmed because I have stills of what the script described. I have pictures of that. I have Rocky and Butkus walking by the river, walking at Fairmount Park at the steps. So I'm pretty sure they were filmed. And then of course, Sly just had a conversation the other day with him. The jacket, the tiger jacket. I knew this about the jacket, but I kind of forgot it, and it got morphed into another story that I heard. And it turns out Stallone was in New York City right before filming a Rocky 2, and him and his brother went to a punk rock shop, and they see the silk tiger jacket and the bracelet, and that's where that came from. There was only one made. I couldn't believe it. And the unique thing is that he then goes to get the collar for Butkus, so they are like inseparable. That's how close they're dressing alike now. That's how close Rocky and Butkus were.
That's cute.
And he has this great talk with Butkus, and he says, "Oh, Butkus, it's important to stay in your zone. It's important to know, like, I'm a great fighter, right? You're a great barker." He goes, like, Butkus, you'd never try to meow. He goes, "Go ahead, Butkus, try to meow. See, you can't meow. You're not a good meower." In other words, Butkus could never pretend to be a cat. And I thought stuff like that, I love that. Yeah. All right. Getting down to my last three. Here's one. When things are starting to go bad for the Balboas, Rocky gets served papers by the bank to vacate his house. So Rocky's got to give the bad news to Adrian, and Rocky goes to the bank, and he leans tough on the bank guy, and it's a great scene. It went back and forth, and it was really, really a good scene. Rocky gives a good speech, but I think I understand why Sly pulled it, because Rocky was a little too, I don't want to say Rocky was a thug, but he had like a pinky toe in the thug water, you know? And I think Sly was like, I don't know if that's kind of the message how I want Rocky to be seen. So I think that was the right call to pull that.
Right, especially for Rocky 2 and becoming the family man, and
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Rocky arrives just after Father Carmine's blessing, and Mickey says, "I'll break your head, you're late." And Apollo sticks his head out the door and asks Mickey, "I'd like to talk with the stallion here." And of course, Mickey doesn't like that. He yells and rants and raves, and Rocky says it's okay. So he says that he's sorry to Rocky about all the negative press. There was a lot more of Apollo being negative, not only negative press towards Rocky, but Apollo and his wife arguing with each other. There was a lot more of that. And obviously we didn't need that. We knew Apollo was angry and upset over it. So he apologizes about the bad press. And he said, he tells Rocky, "I hope you don't get hurt tonight. That's not my intention, but I am going for the quick knockout." And Rocky replies, "I'm going for the knockout too. So, good luck, Apollo." So he goes back inside to the locker room, and Mickey goes, "What the hell did he talk about?" Well, life in general, sparing Mickey any type of worry.
Yeah.
There was a lot more talk between Rocky and Mickey. in the opening of the fight as they're walking to the fight. And here's something that's interesting too. The fight in the script takes place in October, not November, because Rocky tells Mickey, yo, it's a little hot for October, don't you think? And Mickey's like, no, it's perfect fighting weather. Perfect. Don't make my shoulders bend. No, you are perfect, Rock. And so there was a lot of that back and forth. And we got some of that in Rocky 2. And the one big reveal I found, Juergens was back.
Oh.
I think Jeff Temko. I think I've said his name right. I'm sure Danny Watley will beat me up if I didn't get the name right. But I think Temkin. It's either Temko or
it's Temkin.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it Temkin? Thank you.
Yeah.
You saved me a verbal beatdown from Danny Watley. Temkin. He was the ringer, but it was in the original script. It was Juergens comes back. And I thought that was interesting because Apollo says, if I'm going to promote this fight myself, we're going to need a lot of my press contacts and whatever. So I don't know how Juergens fit in, but at some point he must have weaseled his way back in, as promoters will do. As promoters will do. So that was Rocky 2. I really loved reading that. I found it fascinating, and I can't wait to get our podcast over with today because I'm going to go put the screen up and I'm going to watch Rocky 2 today.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of movies with the scripts. It's you learn a lot. You know what I mean? You learn a lot about writing and what to do and what not to do, and how they cut or why they cut. Or at least you can kind of guess why they might have pulled things out. So I find that fascinating. Some of the decisions are frustrating because you're like, oh, why did they pull that scene? It would have been great, but
well, Stacey, we have a guest today, and this young guy is really he is not your typical. And I think he's 26 or he's somewhere between 23 and 27. So I'm going to go. He's going to correct me when he comes on. But I think he's 26 years old, but he's not your average 26-year-old.
Right.
This guy is a rapper, a writer, a director, a producer, an actor. He has some serious aspirations. I got to know him via a gentleman named David Anthony. David Anthony was a friend of mine about 10, 15 years ago. If I had one person on the planet who could do a dead-on perfect Sylvester Stallone, it is this guy that Kevin, our guest coming up, knows. It's David Anthony. This guy was so skilled in voice acting. I mean, he was the best Sylvester Stallone voice I have ever heard from anyone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so David had a son, and the son and our guest, they were friends, and that's how I kind of got to know our guest. And our guest is Kevin Sabo. And is he here?
Here he is, ready to go. Here he comes. Hang on. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hi, Stacey, Mike. Thank you guys for having me on.
Kevin, how old are you?
26 in a couple of days.
Yes, I knew it.
Yeah.
The problem I have, Kevin, you'll probably get here in time. I tend to like forget things just with age. I have limited brain room here, so I'm glad I nailed your birthday.
Well, you know what the funny thing with older entertainment fans is? You get one of two things. You get, oh, you're a young guy that can go back a ways with entertainment, and that's great, or there's still older guys that take a kid my age who's enthusiastic about retro entertainment, but they're not enthused that you're enthused. They'll say, "What do you know about that? What do you know about Rocky? You weren't alive." I'm like, I understand, but the DVD still exists.
Right. I'm caught up.
Yeah, exactly. Right, Stacey. No, and here's the thing. I'm so glad you were able to squeeze us into your schedule. I know you're a busy guy. You know, you really are one of these Rocky fans that has a great knowledge of the fact, a great love and respect of it. What is your favorite Rocky and why?
My favorite Rocky is Rocky Balboa, not just because it must be weird for you guys to understand that that's my childhood.
No, not at all. I get it.
So it's weird. Balboa is I'm 10 when Balboa comes out, and then my teen years is Expendables and Bullet to the Head and Escape Plan. So it's weird that like that's my era of Stallone movies. But I had just got familiar with Rocky right as Sly is making Balboa, so it was like perfect timing. And I had no knowledge of the fact that basically at that point in time, Stallone had become irrelevant in the movies, and this was his comeback. I just knew it was another Rocky. And I think for the most part, that's how the mainstream audience took it also. They didn't take it as, oh, Stallone's making a comeback. They were just like, another Rocky, we're down. Whereas the studios didn't think that was going to be the case. I think the audience thought that was the case. It's like, okay, another Rocky. We're not going to reject it. We're going to go see it.
Right.
And so, yeah, Balboa is my favorite because of the nostalgia it possesses for the entire franchise in a conclusive way. I guess excluding 5 for obvious reasons, but I had never quite seen a sequel that recaptured the original in the way it does, the essence of it, the spirit of it, in the way that Balboa did. Balboa was just, some may say that Rocky 2 is like a perfect sequel in the way that it's has a similar tonality to the original, but I gotta say Balboa is like the ultimate. That's the ultimate Rocky sequel. Oh, the self-awareness of it. I'm tripping up on my ideas here, but pretty much the self-awareness of Balboa, that it wasn't we're just gonna beat a dead horse. It was very self-aware. The age factor is part of the movie. So like when the audience wanted to laugh that he's still going to do this at 59, it's not to say the movie's laughing with you, but the movie is self-aware that is the theme, that as you age, are you going to give up on everything that you were in your prime? And I just think that's so special because like Sly said when he was promoting that film, that's a journey we're all going to cross. All of us. At whatever point, even, just because I'm younger than you guys doesn't mean that I won't get to that point as well, where it's like, okay, you're getting up there in age, and is everything you were in your prime dead? Some of us can't let go of that easily. Like I've seen the people in my life that reach a certain age and are quite confident in saying, this is what I was in my prime, and that's well over with. And then I don't know, I see myself aging that way, being like Sly, which is just, my prime is still my identity. And that's how I perceive Stallone as a person. Wouldn't you say Stallone, even at 76, exudes this idea that, no, my prime is sort of still my identity. Rocky, Rambo, everything. That's still me. None of that is like, I'm the older fellow that's left that behind. And that's, I think that's all pretty encaptured in Balboa, Creed, and pretty much Balboa, Creed, and Creed 2 are kind of like its own new trilogy, basically.
I also think, I think you're onto something there, because I think too, Sly does represent that very, very much so identity-wise, but I also think he represents reinventing yourself, because to stay relevant for 5.5 decades is to me, it's amazing to be that. When you look at all the other stars that are out there that have come and gone, and the young ones that are coming up today, who, like when Sylvester Stallone finally calls it quits and he's just, living on a catamaran out in the bay in Florida, who will be the new Sylvester, right? Who is going to be that type? That, because Sly is he's so versatile. Now, yes, the last half of his career, he did a lot of action, yes, but that's not how he came into the business. Of course, he came in with the acting, and of course, Rocky proved that and should have won an Oscar. Kev, I wanted to ask you, how did Rocky Balboa inspire you? What did Rocky Balboa inspire you to do with your life?
In my filmmaking career, Expendables inspired me more than anything. That's for different. That's for different reasons. But as a filmmaker, the spirit of how these films get made, for one, and that's the chaos factor in a controlled manner, which is very, very important when you're making films. Like you guys talked about the deleted scenes and what did or did not make it into a film. Learning to work on the fly, which creates an authenticity, is huge as a filmmaker. And I was able to absorb all that from the Rocky films, because essentially, when you write a film, if you go into it thinking clearly, as the Rocky films have shown, whether you have a major budget or you have a small budget, like the kind of films I make, I'll make a film on 10 grand or so. But if you go into it thinking that you're going to capture everything that was in that script, line for line, scene by scene, block by block, and you're going to be crushed if you can't bring all of that to life. That's what I would pin the ultra film school, college student, artist type. That's like, no, it has to be exactly as it is on the page. But what Stallone taught me is there's a great magic in working on the fly. Like, okay, we lost a location, we lost an actor, we lost extras. basically like the ice rink scene being a great example of that. They were supposed to be flooded with extras, and they said, hey, we got no extras, but we got an ice rink. And look at the scene that it created. So I think you see a lot of that in Stallone's films, both current and past, and the Rocky franchise. And there's an authenticity that brings. And so I took a lot from that. Then later on in my life, when I actually started making my own feature films, I wasn't going to wait on the industry. I had no dream of going and auditioning in Hollywood and trying to be something that I couldn't be, or try to fit a mold that I probably couldn't fit. I was like, nah, I'll just do my own films. Expendables inspired me greatly because, let's say, harsh critics will say that Expendables are like nothing but dumb action movies. Because I'm a filmmaker, I could see the brilliance that they can't see in Expendables. And the brilliance in Expendables is Stallone devised a way to have 10, 12 characters and divide screen time for each of them in a way that makes sense, in a way where it becomes mathematical. So, and also in that same work with what you got attitude. So even though he was able to pull together all those stars, he gets Mickey Rourke, and it's like, great, we have Mickey Rourke. Well, we don't really have them, though. We have him for 2 days. What can you do with 2 days? So he takes 2 days and he spaces it out in a way where it feels like Mickey Rourke is actively actively a part of the film, when he's really just the guy that has 3 scenes. But the way in which that's dispersed evenly throughout the film makes it feel like he's more of a main character. And so I took that greatly working on my first indie film, because I was dealing with that same kind of situation and worse. I had people that were like, kid, you're not worthy of more than 2 days of my time. You know, I'll be on a Hollywood movie set one day, then I got to come film with a 22-year-old kid in Connecticut. I'll give you 2 days and that's all you got. And so I'm thinking of the same sort of scenario. I'm like, okay, if we could do 4 scenes in 2 days, then we disperse those scenes out evenly. Now, the actors that did those scenes for me were surprised to find out they're a main character in my film, because they think they only did 2 days.
Right. See, that's the thing. You have such a wide breadth of I think, experience. That's why I said you are not a typical 26-year-old in this realm. You are a much older, I think, to a degree, wiser person than your average 26-year-old, at least in this sphere. I've never had dinner with you, so I don't know if you dropped your food all over the place or what. But when it comes to this, you are in the upper echelon of older fans, and you can relate to them. And that's one of the things I long time ago I noticed that about you. One of the things I want to ask you about too, I'm going to kind of jump all over, because there's a lot of things I want to get to with you, but I have this other idea that I'd like to bring you back as well for 2 or 3 segments over the next month or month and a half, because there's a lot of things. I know you. I know how much you have to say, and I don't want to cut that short. I want the audience to hear that, because it's fascinating, and I love getting into the weeds, as we say. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is the Rocky video games. What's your thoughts on them?
So I did a
not the Creed, just the Rock, because I haven't seen the Creed one yet.
Yeah, if anybody watching this wants to move around YouTube a little bit, if you type in my YouTube channel, Savo Central, you'll find a variety of strange things. But one of the videos you might find is I actually did this 15-minute video in which I ran through every single video game ever based on a Stallone movie, and I reviewed all of them. And I'm not a crazy video game guy. I'm like a nerd about 2-3 games in existence, and that's it. But I'll play a video game once every 2 years. But what I will say is that PlayStation 2 Rocky game really, really was a worthy effort, because it really does look just like the movies, and it adds scenes that weren't in the films just for extra dramatic effect. But that's the most attractive to me, the PlayStation 2 Rocky games, because I think one of them is called Rocky Legends, and you get to like play Rocky in the fight against Tommy Gunn, and it looks just like the flick. So I definitely think that those were cool. I'm trying to think of the other ones.
The one favorite I loved about the game that I played, it's the only game I have. Well, I have that, and I have Jaws. You could be the shark and eat fishermen, and it's great. But Rocky, you could be the Rocky statue and you can fight Mickey, or the Rocky statue can, like, it comes off the stand and you can fight Drago. And when it hits, it's like what brass, that clanging sound would make when it punches, and you can't beat the statue. The statue is unbeatable. It's so fun. It's crazy.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, one of the ones that I threw into that equation was I came across this game where you can play as Drago, just walking through the street like a side-scrolling Nintendo game, just beating people up, and then they bleed and they bleed profusely. It's not really like I don't even think it's in the Rocky realm. It's just Drago hitting people and they bleed like crazy, and it looks like a Nintendo game. I don't know if it was independently developed, but I got a kick out of that.
I'll tell you what, the games, and I know the Rocky games came out years ago. At that point, they were so much more advanced than the cliffhanger game that came out. You remember? I don't know if you.
Yeah, I still have cliffhanger. Cliffhanger is kind of boring. I think that the point of the reason I made that video is it's interesting that Stallone movies were never really adapted into any good video games. Most cinema wasn't adapted into good video games, especially in like the Nintendo, Super Nintendo era. But there's got to be more Schwarzenegger games that are at least a little bit more playable than Stallone games. But you'd think for such action flicks, you'd have a better selection of games. And basically, what I ended up boiling it down to is the only ones that are playable is that Rocky Legends game, and then there was a Judge Dredd game on Super Nintendo that's really good. But I said in the video, I don't know if you could count that as a Stallone game because Judge Dredd's based on a comic. In my world, I would have never known what Judge Dredd is.
Oh, really?
Would you have known about Judge Dredd if it weren't for Stallone?
Okay, so here's the only way I knew about Judge Dredd ahead of time is because I had collected the Judge Dredd comics before Sly made it. 2000 AD comics is what they were out of the UK, and my comic book shop in the mid 90s is when I got back when I was in the police academy. I started collecting. It was right around the death of Superman, and I had gotten back into collecting Superman comics. And the guy had a 2000 AD comic. They were big. They were like this big, this wide. And I was just looking at it, and he goes, it's from the UK. We have it flown in, once a month, whatever. And I was like, wow, it's kind of cool. And that was my first intro to Judge Dredd. I didn't buy it until Sly did Judge Dredd. Right. So on that point, you have a valid point there.
And then how about Bullet to the Head is based on a French comic?
I got to tell you, I liked the comic. I have the comic upstairs. I like the comic better than the movie. I was not a fan of Bullet to the Head. I wish I had a bullet to the head after the movie.
But how about his physique in that film?
Oh, it's crazy. He's crazy, and he's crazy good in everything. Sly himself is very good. I don't know what happens. I know the director did Warriors, and that was a great movie and all that, but I don't know. It didn't gel. Bullet to the Head. I mean, I'll put it to you this way, Kevin. There's no Bullet to the Head tour. Okay.
No. Where would you be taking them throughout New Orleans or Louisiana?
Right? Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and if you actually guys don't mind me asking you a question, I don't know if either of you have a favorite movie that you enjoy observing Stallone's performance in, even if it's not a great flick. And for me, it's Bullet to the Head. Bullet to the Head's not a good flick, but I enjoy him in that because it's. I don't want to say it's a unique performance, but it's him being almost as close as he ever really got to being a real bad guy in cinema. And he's a real nasty dude in that movie. And it's pretty authentic. What I like about it is when I don't enjoy Stallone, it's for the same reasons that the audience don't enjoy Stallone. And that's when he is, to be specific about it, overly authoritative and shouty, Judge Dredd-ish. Gotcha. But what I liked about Bullet to the Head is he was, angry, nasty, threatening, but in a more calm demeanor. There's nothing. There was nothing overly expressive, and I was like, that's a pretty badass character for such a strange flick. And by homeboy that did the Warriors too. I expected so much more.
Right? Yeah.
Walter Hill, right?
Yeah. That's it. Stacey, do you have a particular to Kevin's question? Do you have a particular?
I do. I like Detox or ICU. I thought he did really well.
I love Detox.
Yeah, and it's a very different role for him, and I'm assuming that's why he picked it on purpose. And I was like, and he shares the screen very evenly with all the other characters, and I don't know. I walked away from that saying, if anyone ever says he can't act, they don't know what they're talking about, because I thought his acting performance in that was fabulous.
Well, when you're an actor watching Stallone, you're an actor observing another actor. So when you're an actor, you're constantly working on technique, reaction, ways of staying in the moment. Right. And the more I worked on acting technique for my own films, the more I started noticing acting technique in Stallone movies that people don't see or that the audience wouldn't recognize. Like if you take, for example, I have a retrospective on the entire Expendables series, by the way. And I touched on the fact that when it's an actor observing another actor, you don't just see a gunslinging badass, because the way the audience or the way the critics judge, and in some sense the audience is if Stallone's playing a gun wielding badass, that's not good acting. Surely in the realm of perfect cinema, that could never be good acting. But when I see Sly play Barney Ross, at least in the first one, I notice the demeanor of always being observant to threat, because he's a trained killer and threat is all around him. So again, I like the calm, laid back demeanor. There's a few jokes, but not as many jokes as there are in the other Expendables films. But I notice an on guard, tense, always observant and on the look for threat kind of vibe with Stallone in that movie, but it's in a subtlety. I feel like that's something an actor, or someone who is not an actor, wouldn't pick up on. They'd just be like, "Oh, he's being tough again," right? I'm like, yeah, but not
the reason for it.
Yeah, but not in an overly expressive way. Real quick, I do want to say, I think in his later years, I want to say post Creed, I think Creed awakened something in Sly. I swear, because I think there's been eras of his career where he didn't take himself seriously as an actor. It just took himself as seriously as a filmmaker more than an actor. But I swear Creed awakened something in Sly, because I think everything he's done after that, I see so much tensity in his eyes. In Rambo, and even in those Escape Plan movies that really only did well overseas. They're like direct to DVD over here, the Escape Plan sequels. I was watching one of those Escape Plan sequels, and I'm like, he's just sleepwalking through this to make a paycheck, because they don't do anything in the States. They're direct to DVD in the States. I think they actually do theaters in China and things like that. But I'm still watching this, like I still see the tensity there. And whether you like the fifth Rambo or not, I know a lot of people didn't. I still like the tensity is I can't wait to see what he does next, because I just think he's in a different zone in his older age.
Well, this Tulsa King, I'm so excited about this. I really am, and I know we're getting off the Rocky subject.
No, that's fine. My bad.
But the Tulsa King is really something that I know it's something that moves him greatly. I mean, this is written for him, so I'm sure he's feeling pressure. I don't doubt it. He must be, because he's got to be in Oklahoma for 6 months filming 10 episodes. So that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, look at how important subtlety is in dramatic acting. And Balboa in Rocky VI, he cries like a nervous breakdown kind of crying, tears pouring, sniffling, holding back tears, which, anytime you see an actor that can really pull off crying, you're like, wow, he's got some chops. But nobody looks back at that flick and particularly says that was like a standout performance. Creed, every emotional scene, Rocky looks like he wants to cry. He's holding back tears, but he doesn't cry. And somehow you see how that subtlety really strikes people, sometimes more than being overly expressive. Whereas, like, I don't think I could cry like Sly did in Balboa, but that always on the verge of emotional breakdown is what it seems like in Creed. But reserving it, that's said a lot more to everybody. They were like, wow, the tensity in his eyes.
What were your thoughts on the director's cut of Rocky IV in November?
Yes.
You want to go first, Stacey? Or did you already touch on that before?
We did. We had a whole episode on that. But I do like this question for our guests.
I gotta be honest, I really didn't know what to make of it. I had suspected that there couldn't possibly be that much extra footage to concoct a totally different film. So it was cool to see, the added scenes, and that's about how I felt about it. To be honest with you, I had nothing stood out to me in a way that I was like, wow, this is vastly different than the other ones. The whole conversation surrounding it really made me realize, wow, that flick, that really is very different from just about all the other Rockies. But it was so 80s that it's Rocky IV is almost grouped in with those like spectacular, big, supercharged 80s culture movies than it is with the Rocky series. It's almost like the Rocky series seems to be a different conversation from Rocky IV. Rocky IV, I think that'll get thrown in a conversation in the same manner of like Back to the Future and whatever big 80s thing, was happening. It's like Def Leppard, Back to the Future, Rocky IV, this, that, and the third, you name it. So yeah, it is really different. And I didn't know if Sly could actually make it feel more like the rest of the flicks. And I could see he slowed the pace where he could, But I don't know. I didn't really take anything extraordinary out of it, to be honest with you.
Rocky 5, you're directing it. What do you do differently?
Oh, good question.
Oh, it's more about how I would have written it differently.
Let's hear it.
And well, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't think Rocky 5 is a bad flick at all.
I
really.
agree. I agree.
It's what it has to live up to that makes it bad, because it follows all these other great flicks. But what I think the main thing about Rocky 5 that I don't think many people could put their finger on why they dislike it. Some people say it's he didn't fight in the ring, and I've heard some people make the argument. Do you think if he fought Tommy Gunn in the ring, it would have made all the difference because it would have felt more like a Rocky flick? And I don't think it's any of that. I think it was watching Rocky be played a fool is the most disturbing thing about Rocky 5. Yeah. Watching Rocky get played by this promoter and this young kid, and not really have a real resolve. There's no real resolution where at the end of the day, he beats up Tommy Gunn, and it was awesome. I mean, it's a great scene, but he doesn't really win anything in the end. But the interesting thing about Rocky 5 is, you mentioned Dave earlier. Dave and I did a skit back in the day where he could do all the voices. So he did a skit where Al Pacino makes a time machine, and Sly says, I'm going to go back in time and stop myself from making Rocky 5. And then when he comes back to the present, it turns out Joe Pesci made the Expendables instead of him, because if he had never made Rocky 5, he would have no basis for Rocky Balboa, then no Rambo, then no Expendables. So I think looking back, Sly got to look at that as, you took the hit for the time being. Nobody wanted to see Rocky films for 10 years. Fine, we don't need a Rocky film for 10 years. We needed it 15 years later. And then we get Balboa and Creed 2, and that had to ride off of Rocky making it back to his roots. So at least it brought him back there. But would you agree with that basically watching Rocky be played a fool is kind of like basically the worst part of that movie?
See, Stacey, you go first.
Yeah.
I have a little different answer on that.
Okay.
It's funny, Kevin, that rings with me 100%. That bothers me. And it's like he never really manages to get through to the kid. And it's like Tommy Gunn doesn't ever arrive at this new improved human. And you know what I mean? I just think it would have been nice if somehow he figured something out. I absolutely agree with that. For me, Rocky 5, the most important thing was his relationship with his son, and that he was misprioritizing his priorities were messed up, and he was putting all his energy in the wrong place. And for me, that's Rocky's growth in that segment, you know what I'm saying, of the series. And that was my favorite part. Anything with Sage.
Yeah, you actually made me think of another thing before Mike goes. It's a real dilemma to want to hold on to your career so bad that you want to see it in a younger person, and you want to, maybe you could be a part of a younger person's success, and that makes up for the fact that you can no longer fight.
Yep.
But for it to come at the price of neglecting the people that mean the most to him, Adrian, his kid. All of that felt like that's not something the character would do.
Right.
And I think that is actually the worst part about Rocky 5. It's not the fact that he didn't fight in the ring. It's not the fact that there's hip hop music in it. That is what it is to me.
Neither one of you are wrong. I'm not disagreeing with either one of you. Because if that's how you feel, how can that be wrong? I mean, you can't be wrong. That's how you feel. For me, I'm a big believer in saying that we are the sum total of our life experiences. So wherever you are, whether it's a job, whether you're meeting new friends, whether you're seeing a movie or eating a new dinner or whatever, a new restaurant, you have your whole life is judging that moment, so to speak. What I brought with me to Rocky 5 was all the crap and I was played a fool. Cool. I acted a fool, but I was played a fool by a lot of people growing up. And even as an adult, it never, I mean, it's, listen, I'm a big bullseye for that. So I get that. But I was living vicariously through Rocky in Rocky 5 when he was being made a fool of, and even some of the deleted scenes we didn't see when he tells the pancake story in the bar. I mean, that's even more horrible. I wish that was in the movie. I said, that's me. There I am. Yeah. Only Rocky gets to have revenge. He gets to beat all of the naysayers up in the street, so to speak. Yeah. And I couldn't beat up my entire graduating high school class. So I had to let that go.
We can make it happen. Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. The three of us will just go right now. We'll go Expendables on them. But that's the thing. When I saw that, I liked that because And the reason I liked it, not that I want to see Rocky get beat up, but because I can relate to it in my personal experience. So you guys are completely dead on correct. There's nothing wrong with what you said. I think that's another metaphor that Sly has put out there for us. And the other thing I thought that hurt Rocky 5, maybe the portrayal, the way Sly portrayed brain damage, I think a lot of people weren't sure how to interpret that. But the biggest, and I'm not complaining about Sly's choice at that. I mean, I loved it, but I'm just saying the biggest problem I think I had was the fact that halfway through filming, they're filming the movie with the death of Rocky. So the lines, the musical keys, everything that's being, and then all of a sudden, like Sly says on that new interview last week that came out, he's an employee of Rocky. He doesn't, he owns nothing. So when the producers say, Sly, you know what? I know we all got back together because we agreed we're going to kill Rocky, but you know what? Not happening. You don't kill James Bond. You don't kill Frankenstein. You don't kill Rocky. And that's it. So now they're in Philadelphia for a month. They're filming going down this road. Now they got to change horse midstream and they got to go somewhere else. And now Stallone's got to rewrite it. And he's like, Jesus, we all came together. So I think that also hurt it. Now, I think the three of us are very glad and very grateful they kept Rocky alive.
Oh, God.
And I think Sly is very grateful that they kept kept Rocky alive. You know, Sly wanted to branch out and go do comedy, which I love his comedies, by the way. I do.
They're cute. Some of them are really cute. Yeah.
I can still sing the words to the songs in Rhinestone that he sings. It's you ought to see when I get drunk and sing. Oh my God.
Just hit record. We just want to see it.
Yeah, right.
No, you raise a good point. I didn't think about that kind of ruined the vibe of the film, didn't it? That everything you're seeing is supposed to be leading towards Rocky's demise, and they have to shift gears. So that
you know firsthand, Kev. You know firsthand. If someone told you in the middle of the opener that you can't do it this way no more, we got to do it this way.
Oh, certainly, certainly if it had to be a completely different ending. I mean, changing endings you usually change endings like the last scene where everybody gives their hugs and goodbyes, not the climax. You don't change the climax, which is about essentially what we're talking about with the way the fight with Tommy Gunn ends. And I suppose it was supposed to end in him dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really, to be honest with you, I don't really know what Sly was thinking throughout all of Rocky 5. I think that was the peak of him being like a celebrity. I think that's when he was the most celebrity minded. And you can obviously see that getting knocked down a couple notches and being in direct to DVD hell for so many years is where all the brilliance came back. That's where all the brilliant ideas came back. Because it seems like it actually brought him back to his humble roots where nobody believed in him again. And making Balboa is like making the original. Nobody wants to do it. Whereas kind of seemed like Rocky 5, he's at like peak celebrity status, and he's playing a guy who's been reduced to nothing, and he's living back in his old neighborhood.
Exactly,
which is like a little bit of a disconnect, right?
Kev, before we I hate wrapping up with you, man. I could talk, and that's why
I know.
Stacy, I was telling Stacy a lot about you before throughout the week, and Kevin is a very easy interview because he does a lot of the heavy lifting. He has a lot of knowledge, and he makes our job a lot easier. So I want to bring Kevin back for several kind of like maybe, I don't know, Stacy. You know, we're coming up with new ideas, and I want to have like a little, chat with Kevin type thing.
Have his commentary in it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I think people will really relate to it. The two things one last thing I want to talk about, and then I want to ask you a question after Stacey has any questions for you. The documentary of the re-editing of Rocky 4. Did you see that?
Oh, of course, yeah. I like that better than the re-edit of Rocky 4.
Do you know what? I love the re-edited 4. I mean, it was definitely more down my liking of a Rocky movie, but I loved what Hertzfeld did with an Apple iPhone and recorded Sly an hour and a half going through this. Give me your thoughts on that.
Oh, it was great. It was actually great to see how much intent goes into a re-edit. Sometimes the way we perceive re-edits, bonus features, new editions of a film with the cut scenes reestablished in the film. We kind of look at that as just like, for the most part, I think the viewing audience just views that as like, oh, that's a nice special bonus DVD. And you don't ever think that any kind of heart goes into that. And maybe in most cases it doesn't. Maybe that's just, you know, a cash grab for studios. It's like, oh, we can continue to in a way remake a film or repackage it, and that's more DVD sales. So that's usually the way that's thought of. So to actually see like all the intent behind it was really great. And anytime I can listen to Stallone just talk for a long extended period of time, I'm all in. So yeah, that was fascinating and interesting. And I always love, there's every time he tells a story, there's more and more behind the scenes stuff that I didn't know about. Like, you know, you guys know, you think you know it all, you think you've heard it all.
Oh yeah.
And certainly we know most, than like, you know, the general public knows at least, the story of how he made Rocky, and we know all the intricacies of everything that went on behind every movie, but he always ends up citing a story that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that happened either. So yeah, I thought that was excellent. I really enjoyed that.
He had so much editing to do. I love the fact, I had a conversation with John Rivoli about this a few months back. You know, there's that scene where Stallone's watching Apollo during the Drago fight raise his hand, and there's a glove, then there's no glove, right? And he goes, oh my God. He goes, I never realized that.
None of us did.
Right? So he goes, how did I never notice that? So he said, oh, I'll have to fix that. And at the premiere, he never fixes it. It's still there. The hand. So Stallone never takes out the naked hand with no glove. And I'm like, what happens? And then so I after talking to Rivoli, I was talking to Derek, and Derek, of course, edited it and put that all together.
They didn't have the take, did they?
No, they had it, but for whatever reason, Derek told me that there was so much editing, it just
slipped through.
Oh. It just slipped through. That it slipped through the first time, and it slipped through the second time. I'm like,
yeah,
it's so because he was so keyed in on it. He goes, I never saw that before. Never realized that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. Stacy, before we let Kevin go and we finish out this little fun little podcast, what do you want to talk about? You got any questions for him?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, just it was so interesting. You know, we, Mike and I grew up with gaining Rocky's perspective in real time. You know, we had to wait from 76 to 79 to 82. And I think the coolest thing about a younger person coming in on it, quote unquote, late the way you did, is you start with Rocky Balboa and you get to have all that perspective right away, and you get to apply that perspective to your life as a young person. You know what I'm saying? So now it's like you have all these tools earlier. And so even though you're young, you said right at the beginning, I know I'm not always going to be this young, and one day I'm going to be facing this and facing that. And I think having that kind of perspective that Rocky taught you as such a young person can only affect your decisions in a very smart and thoughtful way. So I think that is fabulous, actually. And I watched the opener. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Yeah.
Did you watch it?
I did watch it.
Wow.
What I like, you know, you checked all the boxes of all the things that we go through. You know, you were betrayed in that. You know what I'm saying? And then you met an Adrian type girl. You know what I'm saying? And you had the struggle, and you didn't feel adequate there, but you know, it was like you're round and in the ring. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you could. And then your Rocky references, of course, I loved. But you know what I'm saying? You checked the boxes of that underdog struggle. And so I could see the way you mirrored what you learned from Rocky in that storyline. So
thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much. It's people say all the time, what is this, like bootleg? This is like bootleg 8 Mile. I'm like, no, it's like a hip hop Rocky. Is you swap out, instead of a training montage, it's a montage of them making a record.
Oh, I totally got it. Yeah.
And then instead of a final battle, it's a final music performance.
Yes.
Actually, if you really watch that flick, you'll see where I think Stallone's done this a lot, as you know, many artists do. Whatever influences you seeps into your subconscious, makes it into your own work, and then you look back at it and you're like, oh my God, I look like a plagiarist, but this is just what has been in my subconscious. Right. There's a moment where the rival rapper steps to me and he says, listen, you know, when you get out there and you do your thing, there's no reason to do anything more than your performance. Don't throw any shade at me. Don't try to diss me like rappers do, and everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, hey, I'm just coming here to do my thing. You worry about you, I'll worry about me. And I look back at that scene and I'm like, Christ, that's Mason DeLine Dixon going up to Rocky saying, hey, there's no reason for either of us to get hurt. You hit me low, I'll get you out of there. I'm like, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's what I'm saying about those moments. I was like, oh my God, it was in your bones. You could see those lessons were in your bones as you, went through, your struggle within the hip hop scene. You know what I'm saying? The things that you faced, and then, her showing up in the end. I don't know. It was just sweet. You could feel the pace, or I don't know, the points were sort of the same. You know what I mean? And it just,
it was.
Was a lot
Thank
of the
you so much.
Was a lot of the opener autobiographical?
Yeah, about 60% of it was.
Yeah,
about 60% of it was, and then I don't know. Sometimes I watch it, I'm like, oh, that's not really how I am. But yeah, the kind of like Rocky-esque little vibe that's in there is just anybody and their mother could be a rapper these days, because the internet exists, and this is all you need. This is all you need: a laptop and a microphone. You don't need to start a band, and you could post it right online. So because of that, anybody that tries their hand at making their own music is seen as a wannabe. And it's the same thing, like Stallone saying, I just want to be able to fail on my own terms at whatever it is I want to do with myself in my career. And it was the same thing. It wasn't about a kid trying to be a famous rapper. And I leave it up to the audience whether or not actually they want to decide he's talented or not. The film isn't to convince you that, wow, this kid's talented and he should really have a shot at something. It's neutral to the fact that he's just lost, and he doesn't really know who he is. All he knows is his identity is attached to his hobby. And so he's taking a shot at something that he thinks is what he is. And he's going to find out whether or not that's actually him, or there's a more of a moral behind it. And the moral of the film is not, okay, we're all going to become famous rappers. It's, I tried my hand at something that everybody doubted me in. And I think what I learned is, look at all the people that stood behind me while going after something that most people think is silly. So it's just like Stallone said that Rocky could have easily been a football player. It's just boxing made more sense for me. That opener could have been a kid trying to be an actor and going on auditions, or it could have been a kid in a rock band, but doing rap was my story. So yeah.
I think my favorite scene was right at the end when the producer calls you and says, "Hey, we're going to sign you on," and you're like, "Yeah, I gotta go," and then you run after the girl, and I was just like, it's amazing.
Right. That was the moral
priorities
shift.
Changed.
Exactly. Yes. It became a different moral, and also kind of like with Rocky losing the fight to Apollo Creed, but just wanting to be there and wanting to have his chance. There when my character does the final performance in the opener, there's no grand moment, and some people actually told me, shouldn't you have built that up more? Like, this is his moment. I'm like, no, it was supposed to be, he's there, he does his performance, and when he steps off stage, he moves into the crowd, and the next performer comes up as if he was never really there. Like, he had the audience's attention for about 2 minutes, and then people forget and move on with their evening, and that's it. He was just there to take his shot and then move back into obscurity, if that's the way it's going. But it wasn't about beating anybody out or a big spectacle. It's just proving whatever you want to prove to yourself. Thank you so much for watching it.
Oh, you're welcome. It was sweet. It was really sweet. You really checked all the boxes, I thought.
Thank you.
Kev, you've got 30 seconds. You're in an elevator with Sylvester Stallone. What do you say to him?
Oh God, I don't want to meet Stallone. I'm so scared. Wait, Stace, have you met him too?
I have not met him. I have not met him. I know he knows I exist, but I have not met him. No.
I don't know. Okay, I can't make this question fantasy because I'm just too much of a realistic guy. Anytime I've met celebrities, I know that they're like we talked about, Mike, you know, you could be the uncool guy that's like, your movie saved my life, your record saved my life, my sister loves your stuff, or you could say, he's on a time limit. Hey, handshake, thanks for all the years of great work. And if you and if he's friendly, you got an extra second. Oh, where you heading next? Where you doing? You're out shooting Tulsa King. That's the kind of guy I am around celebrities. Right, I couldn't. I've met a lot of my favorite celebrities, a lot of my favorite musicians, and that's just about the way it's always gone down. I would only ever want to meet Sylvester Stallone or have a conversation with him if I had the same kind of opportunity Mike had, that I was able to do either an interview with him or work on some kind of project with him or something to that effect, where there's a respect level that, he sees something in you, like he sees something in Mike. So when they engage, it's more than, hey, I'd love you to sign this. Hey, I'd love you to know that Rocky inspired me to be masculine and lift weights. And it's like, oh, great. Like the rest of the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, I'm sure Sly's got his humble side, but then he's got his celebrity side, and he's got the side of him that remembers being ambushed by every kid that ever grew up watching Rocky ever. And I have no fantasy on running up on Sylvester Stallone with a Sharpie.
You never know what's going to happen. You just don't know. I'm telling you. So every once in a while, Sly checks out the show. So who knows? Maybe he'll see you.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I put it like this: if for any reason I didn't have a pleasant encounter with the guy that like inspired my whole life, then I might have a life crisis. If he was a little too busy, if he was a little too busy on that occasion, like, hey kid, I don't really have time for it right now, then it'd be like, okay, well, I have the Expendables logo on my back. So
right.
I'm supposed to do it myself now.
Like, seriously, he would love that. He would love that. You know, it's funny that you do say that, Kev, because when the first like 12 times I met him, I was in fanboy mode, but I controlled myself enough that I wasn't obnoxious, and that always resonated with him. And so I get that. And that's okay. I think it's okay to be like that. But my point is that Sly was always so nice to me, even when I was in fanboy mode. He never was rude or ignorant. He was just so generous.
If I could to play more to the fantasy part of your question, if I could ask Stallone any question and have a conversation with him, I would want to know how he deals with always having to battle with the studios to get his films made the way he wants to make them after he's proved himself time and time and time again. In other words, there's somebody in Hollywood that's had a career as long as Sly that gets a movie green-lighted easily, and then here's Sly with every single massively successful film idea he has to fight tooth and nail for it. And he's got to talk this guy with a 40-50 year career of nothing but hits, a hit film in every decade of the past 5 decades. And at 75 years old, if he has an idea, he's still got to sit with some young producer, might be my age, talking about, well, I don't really know, Sly. I don't really know, Rocky and Rambo was real. That's so strange to me, because I know it's all politics, but certainly there's another famous filmmaker that's getting an easier ride than Sly in Hollywood, where it's like, hey, if he wants to do it, if he wants to do it, it's got to be good, because look at his reputation. But it obviously seems like every time Stallone has an idea, the studios battle him on it. But if he wins the battle, he makes the studio a ton of money. But then some time goes on, his relevance dissipates a little bit. He's got another idea, and suddenly the last $1 billion idea is forgotten about.
Yeah.
I've never understood that.
That's more, and that's some of the stuff I want to touch on too. We'll get into Rocky Balboa and how they basically tried to crucify him getting it made. So, Kev, before we let you go, where can people find you?
Yeah.
Savo Central on YouTube. My Instagram is Savo Music CT. And my film, The Opener, is on a channel called The Fellas. But if you just punch in The Opener, Kevin Savo, I released it for free on YouTube. But on Savo Central is where I have my Expendables retrospective, where I go into 30-minute detail of everything you could need to know about the Expendables movies.
Good stuff.
And and the bit where I reviewed all the Sylvester Stallone video games.
Cool.
I love it. I might go back and watch that video game thing again. I really enjoyed that a lot.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. I definitely love to do this with you guys again. I'll come a little more prepared next time. And sorry for
you were so unprepared, Kev. We had to drag it out of you.
Well, I'm sorry for running over the clock a little bit.
No. You're great.
No, you're good.
No, I would like to. The both of us would like to bring you back for a couple more episodes to talk about this stuff. Kev, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks.
Take care, pal.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
I knew he'd be a good guest.
Wow. I mean, he has Rocky and Stallone down like the back of his hand. It's like gospel. You know what I'm saying?
He studied it. He knows. He gets it. He understands.
Every nook and cranny, and the perspective that he has from Rocky, like I said, and from Stallone's career, and different the way he can see the progression of Stallone's acting in different settings. I mean, he has him down like the gospel according to. Yes.
Don't you think he's far older than 26?
Yes. No, you said that. You're like, he's an older
really
soul. That is clear. Yes.
He really is. Yeah. He's going to be good in the future too. We bring him back in for more stuff. And I really appreciate that. So Kev, thank you, my friend.
Yeah. Very good.
This is a good segue, because we talked about the Expendables a little bit. So Stacy, Expendables 4 promo poster is out.
Yes.
Do we have a picture? We show everybody what it looks like.
We do. Here it is. Right there.
Now let's take a look at this. It says they'll die when they're dead. That's the tagline. Like Rocky was 1 in a million shot. Well, they'll die when they're dead. All right, I guess that's accurate.
That's true. They'll kill you to death.
We don't. It's true. So we don't know a lot about the plot about Expendables 4. I know Stallone is in it. Maybe 25% of the time, 30% of the time, it's a reduced role. I think he chose to maybe kind of step back a little bit. And I think he's passing the torch to Statham, Lee Christmas's character. And so that'll be kind of interesting what they have cooked up, whether we'll see Arnold or Bruce or Harrison Ford or whoever's coming back. It's always good to see Dolph Lundgren on the screen. I know he's back. So that's always good to see Rocky and Drago fighting together again.
Yeah. It's amazing to me to see how healthy and strong they still are, and they're fighting age, and they're still amazing. I love that.
Me too. They're they're human and they're imperfect, but man, have they done some incredible things with their lives that have inspired the rest of us to continue moving forward. And it's just it's amazing.
For sure.
Anyways, that's all I got, Stacy. I don't have anything else.
I want to say happy birthday, Talia Shire, which is why I
that's right. A big happy birthday to Talia.
So nice to see her little face. And actually, I'm going to be sending Rivoli a little request. I have the picture of Talia Shire that I posted in the red. That's the one I would love to see him paint. So Rivoli, if you're listening, I will be the first one to buy that one. I love that. Yeah. And then Rick Babcock, of course, just so you all know, here he is. Here he is.
There's our guy.
Yeah. And this is at Rocco Bob, right there is where you would order your t-shirts and so forth. And thank God there's this little wife right in the middle. Her name is Deb. She's adorable. She is checking me. She was like, hey, you misspelled merchandise. And I was like, oh my God. So I corrected it. So thank you, Deb, because I hated it. She felt bad. I'm like, no, you need to tell me these things. I feel so stupid when I do that.
Funny.
So now I know how to spell merchandise. And And what about you? Tell us about your tour, Michael.
I run a little tour called the Yo Philly Rocky Film Tour. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok, which is TikTok Rocky, TICKT. TikTok, TOK. I can't spell. You think you can't spell? I can't spell TikTok. TICKTOK. TikTok Rocky.
Yes.
So you can find me over there, and they really hate my guts over there. TikTok
Stop!
Rocky. Oh, I'm telling you, the comments that go on, it's unbelievable. But over there, I do tend to mix it up a lot with the haters and the trolls, and it's funny. It's very different than my Instagram. My Instagram is very loving and wonderful and Rocky and light, and it's great and Rocky facts. Over there, it's like Andrew Dice Clay meets yes. I get a little bit blue humor and rowdy.
That's all right.
Check us out there and check in the Rocky Files. Keep watching, people, because we are growing. Stacy, we hit 1,000 people. 1,000 followers.
Yes.
I'm telling you,
there
are some Rocky podcasts out there that have been around a lot longer than us, and they don't have quite as much. So I gotta say,
really? Yes.
Oh yeah. So I'm very happy about that.
That's good. Yeah.
I'm very happy. I mean, we're not Joe Rogan numbers yet, but
that's okay. That's okay.
We may or may not get there, but we are having a great time. Anyways, Stacy, this has been awesome. You know, I enjoy these podcasts more than anything.
Me too. Thank you. We have a blast.
I will see you next week, my friend. And
see you next week. Keep punching. Bye-bye.